One of the longest-running and most respected voices at KTIB and KHOM was Roy Vicknair. Let's listen to his recollections of working in Houma Thibodeau Broadcasting. Roy Vicknair, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, and William coming up here brings back a lot of memories. In many respects, the studios look the same in many respects. So this brings back a lot of memories. It's been 4.5 years since I retired and left KTIB.
Well, let's start from the beginning. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from New Orleans. To make a long story short, I began my career here at KTIB in the early 60s. I stayed here through most of the 60s. Left, well, specifically in 1969, and went on to KHOM, where I spent most of my broadcast time in Houma. Of course, KHOM has long changed call letters and moved out of the area. In the early 90s, well, 94 to be exact, KTIB, KHOM were one of the same operation. I was asked to come back here, so I spent the last 5 years of my broadcasting career here and retired in 99. So I've been here in the 60s and in the 90s.
One thing I'd like to ask, which I forgot about earlier, is how did you first get linked up with KTIB?
Well, I had worked at another station prior to coming here. I had met Ray Sadie back in the very early 60s, and I knew at the time he was looking for someone. So I decided to come apply. It was actually the summer of 1962. And I stayed here through 1969. Got many memories of that decade. That was my favorite time here at the station.
And one unfortunate news event that occurred at the time, which everybody alive at the time will remember very much, was Hurricane Betsy. And other employees had told me, being on day and night nonstop with coverage, that must have been by far one of the most memorable events.
Well, probably that was, well, without a doubt, that was my most memorable recollection of this station. And I go as far as saying, as in all my years in broadcasting, that single event stands out as probably our finest hour, being on the air in 1965. We managed, through sheer luck and perhaps some planning and perseverance, to be one of the few stations that remained on the air during that time. Unfortunately, many of the New Orleans stations were off the air. Probably many of the TV stations were possibly off. But then again, if you had no electricity and you had TV, if your antenna wasn't blown down, no one had cable back in those days, you probably wouldn't have much contact with the outside world. A lot of people told us after the hurricane that we were their only link with the outside world. And I distinctly remember, and I have no other recollection of this in my entire broadcasting career, we got more mail, more response, hundreds of letters. People used to write letters back in those days, hundreds of letters relating how we were their touch with the outside world on a little battery-operated radio. That by far was, you know, we managed to have auxiliary power and read the news by flashlight or by candlelight, you know. Back then, we were down the street on West 3rd, not in the present location of the station.
Okay. Now, what was the reason for moving over to KHOM a little while later?
Well, Ray Sadie, who was a manager here at KTIB at the time, left. And back in '68, he left. And he decided to open an FM station in Houma. At the time, he offered me an opportunity to go in '68. I decided to pass on that, so I was not a KHOM at the very beginning when they signed on in late '68. However, I did go to KHOM in the summer of '69, where I stayed until 1994 when I came back here. An incredible amount of time to stay, not typical of most people who would move on. But when I moved from the city, I married a gal from Vacherie, and we decided to make this a home and raise a family in Houma. But that was the reason that I decided to leave. I eventually picked up and joined Ray. He opened, it was probably one of the first FM-only stations in the state, if I remember at the time. FM was in its infancy then, and most, maybe not all, but most FM stations had an AM affiliate. They couldn't sustain themselves. It was kind of a risky deal to open an FM-only station. Few people had FM. much less in their cars. It was unheard of. So it was an entirely different era at the time.
Very good. Now, of course, along the way, there's quite a few people you worked with, many people you've interviewed, and we obviously won't have time to talk about the vast majority of them. But I do want to talk about one lady who worked with you at both stations, and that's Marie Bergeron. When I first talked to Marie about you, the first thing that came to her mind was that Roy knows more about music than should be allowed, and that she just thinks the world of you. Give us your comments on Marie.
Well, I don't know if I did worthy of that comment. I know a little bit about music, or I used to know about music. Marie, if I had to pick one single person that's most identifiable with this station, by far, it would be her, because she stayed here from, for decades and decades, and she had some affiliation with KHOM too. But Marie was the voice of KTIB. There were many other great people that crossed my paths here and at the other station. But she had a lot of stamina and get up and go. She lived news 24 hours a day. She would be wherever news would break, and she took the job very, very seriously, And for a long time, she had a long-running interview program here in the morning I can't say enough about Marie. There are many people that I could comment on, but if you had to ask me one person, that would be her.
Also, when I, a while back, had the honor of speaking with Rick Luquette, who spoke highly of you as well, and one of the funny stories he mentioned was the time that you had given away S&H green stamps on the air as part of a running contest. Now, a lot of the young people out there may not know about that. It's probably one of the more unique prizes KTIB or KHOM ever gave away. Tell the younger listeners exactly what were S&H green stamps.
Well, back in those days when gasoline might have been 19 cents a gallon or 29 cents a gallon, I forget what it was then, when you would go fill up, you would get S&H green stamps. You got X amount of stamps for X amount of dollars, and you accumulated these stamps and put them in books, and at some point you would go to a redemption center and pick your gift. It was a big thing. Everybody collected stamps. They've been long gone for, I guess, 2 decades or more. But, yeah, we gave away 104,000 S&H green stamps at KHOM. Mm-hmm. It was, Rick Luquette was one of the many people. I'd be hard-pressed to remember everybody, but he was one that I remember. I have so many memories of the station. The Hurricane was, of course, the top one. Here's one, the broadcast we did from the Fireman's Fair. I recall very fond memories. This was an annual event. We did the parade. We did the fair. We did it here at KTIB. When I went to KHOM, we came to Thibodaux and also broadcast. This fireman here is so very unique, and the city is so blessed to have an organization such as this. One person stands out. Lee Martin he was revered by so many firemen. Of course, we all know he passed on some years ago. He was the fireman's historian, and often during the broadcast every year we would ask him to recall some of the history of the fair. It's quite colorful, and I always look forward to talking to Lee Martin when we did fair broadcast. And we had a fun time, and we really let our hair down when it came to the fair.
Obviously, you were part of broadcasting for a long time. Was it hard to leave in 1999?
I enjoyed every minute of it, but there's a time in everyone's life you have to move on. I enjoyed all my years here at KHOM. I had a wonderful time and, established many ties with the community. In my early days here, I was a member of the JCs, worked closely with them, and some years ago in home, I was in numerous organizations. So through the station, I had many community ties. But to answer your question, well, even though it wasn't, I knew it was time to retire, go on to another life, and I haven't really looked back. Prior to leaving radio, I had started a little sideline business. I became a videographer and did video weddings and whatnot. And when I retired from the station, I decided, well, hey, now I can do this all I want in my retirement. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I decided that as much as I loved it, I decided to give that up too, because I wanted more time to be with family and just, relax and take things easy. But I've been very busy in retirement. I recently moved after most of my adult life here in basketball in Terrebonne-Lafourche and moved to LaPlace, where I'm closer to my daughters and my grandchildren. And I don't regret the move, and I love it there, but I still miss the wonderful people of Terrebonne-Lafourche. This will always be home in a sense.
And so it should. Well, listen, we greatly appreciate your time with this interview. It's wonderful that you took the time to come out to see us. And as always, don't hesitate to come by and visit.
We could talk endlessly, and I could remember so many great people that I long remember here at this station and at KHOM, that very pleasant people to work with. And I feel that it was a real honor to be able to work with such fine professional people. And coming up here brings back a lot of memories. And good luck to you and everyone here at KTIB, and happy 50th anniversary.
Whether it was news, music, or information, Roy Vicknair always had his pulse on the listening audience's needs